My name is Sophia Chen, and I learned that in the culinary world, the most dangerous egos aren't in the kitchen, they're in front of the cameras. For 5 years, I'd run the Golden Lotus, a small fusion restaurant in San Francisco's Richmond district that blended my grandmother's traditional Chinese recipes with modern California cuisine. I still remember opening night, when every dish seemed like a small revolution. My grandmother's secret XO sauce recipe, refined through 3 generations of Chen women, transformed simple California ingredients into something extraordinary. Back then, I believed that great food would always speak for itself. I couldn't have been more wrong. The trouble started when James Martinez, celebrity chef and host of American Kitchen Master, chose San Francisco for his latest restaurant venture. Martinez wasn't just opening a restaurant, he was launching an empire, with a chain of high-end Asian fusion establishments planned across the country. I first met him at a local food critics dinner, where upcoming restaurants were invited to showcase their signature dishes. My contribution was a modern take on Cantonese black cod, glazed with my grandmother's XO sauce and served with locally sourced vegetables. Interesting attempt, Martinez said, barely tasting the dish before pushing it aside. But this is amateur cooking. The sauce lacks depth, complexity. This is what happens when people think they can just mix cuisines without proper training. What Martinez didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my amateur sauce was the result of 3 generations of culinary expertise, refined through years of careful experimentation and passed down in secret. You see, my grandmother hadn't just been a great cook. She'd been a culinary innovator who understood that some recipes were too valuable to share freely. When she fled China in 1949, she brought with her not just recipes, but a deep understanding of how flavors work together. For months after Martinez's arrival, I watched as he built his empire. His new restaurant, East Meets West, was promoted everywhere, promising to revolutionize Asian fusion cuisine. Local food critics fell over themselves praising his innovative approach to traditional flavors. But I noticed something during the previews. His signature dishes, particularly his sauces, seemed strangely familiar. Not exact copies of traditional recipes, but adaptations that showed a deep understanding of Chinese cooking techniques that weren't commonly known outside traditional culinary circles. That's when I started paying closer attention to Martinez's operation. During the day, I ran the Golden Lotus, maintaining our loyal customer base and refining our menu. But at night, I began investigating how Martinez developed his recipes. My suspicions were confirmed when Lisa Wong, a line cook who'd recently quit Martinez's kitchen, came to dine at my restaurant. "Your XO sauce," she said after tasting my black cod. "It's similar to what Martinez is trying to recreate. He's been obsessed with developing an XO sauce that can compete with local Chinese restaurants, but he can't quite get it right." I kept my face neutral, but my mind was racing. How is he developing these recipes? Lisa looked around before leaning in. He sends people to eat at successful Asian restaurants, brings back samples for his test kitchen to analyze. He's been particularly interested in your dishes. That explained the sudden increase in takeout orders, always the same dishes, always during quiet hours. Martinez's team was trying to reverse engineer my grandmother's recipes. I made a crucial decision then. Instead of confronting Martinez or trying to protect my recipes through legal means, I decided to let him play right into my hands. Working with my cousin David, a food photographer and social media expert, we began a careful campaign. We slightly modified our takeout recipes, making subtle changes that would lead Martinez's team down the wrong path. Meanwhile, we documented everything. Every order from his staff, every attempt to duplicate our dishes. "He's getting desperate," David reported after attending a preview dinner at East Meets West. "The opening's in 3 weeks, and he still can't replicate the depth of flavor in your sauces." Martinez's frustration showed in his public appearances. During a local cooking show appearance, he dismissed traditional Chinese restaurants as stuck in the past and suggested that modern chefs needed to elevate these cuisines. "Some people," he said, looking directly at the camera, "should accept that they're out of their league and leave innovation to the professionals." The final confrontation came at a major food festival 2 weeks before his restaurant's opening. Martinez had arranged to film a special episode of American Kitchen Master there, featuring his new recipes. I watched from my festival booth as he worked the crowd, cameras following his every move. He was demonstrating his revolutionary sauce techniques. explaining how he developed them through years of classical training. That's when I made my move. I'd entered the festival's blind tasting competition, submitting 2 dishes, my original XO sauce recipe and a version matching the modified recipe we'd been sending out in takeout orders. The judges, including several renowned international chefs, tasted all entries without knowing their origins. Martinez himself was invited to taste and comment, his reactions being filmed for his show. This, he declared, tasting my original sauce. This is what I've been talking about. Depth, complexity, a perfect fusion of traditional and modern techniques. He turned to the camera with his famous smile. This is clearly the work of a trained professional who understands true innovation. Then he tasted the modified version, the one his team had been trying to copy. His face fell slightly. This is amateur work. Someone trying to copy better chefs without understanding the fundamentals. I stood quietly in the back as the head judge stepped forward to announce the results. The winning sauce, he began, was created by Sophia Chen of the Golden Lotus. And interestingly, the sauce that placed last was a very similar recipe, but lacking key elements that make the original so special. Martinez's face froze as cameras swung between him and me. In that moment, he realized he just praised my professional work while dismissing his own team's attempt to copy it as amateur. But this wasn't just about embarrassing a celebrity chef. As I walked forward to accept the award, I was already thinking about the footage that would air on his show and about the trademark application my lawyer had submitted months ago. Because sometimes the best way to deal with culinary theft is to let them taste their own medicine, right before serving them the main course. The week between the food festival and the airing of Martinez's show was the longest of my life. While his team scrambled to control the damage from the festival incident, I worked with my lawyer to prepare for what we knew was coming. Everything had to be perfect. This wasn't just about exposing a celebrity chef's arrogance, it was about protecting culinary heritage and innovation. They're trying to edit the footage, David reported after talking to a friend who worked in TV production. But they can't cut around Martinez praising your sauce without ruining a whole segment. I smiled, thinking about the careful trap we've laid. The festival episode was meant to be the centerpiece of Martinez's promotional campaign for East Meets West. They couldn't just bury it. His restaurant opens in 3 days, my lawyer, Jennifer Kim, said during our preparation meeting. And we have everything ready on our end. Everything, I confirmed, reviewing our documentation. Every takeout order from his staff, every attempt to copy our recipes, and most importantly, the trademark applications I filed 6 months ago. What Martinez didn't know was that I hadn't just protected my recipes. I documented the entire culinary heritage behind them. Working with food historians and Chinese cuisine experts, we'd established clear evidence of how these recipes had been developed and passed down through generations. The first cracks in Martinez's facade appeared during his restaurant's soft opening. Food critics noticed that several promised signature dishes were mysteriously absent from the menu, particularly the sauces he'd been promoting. Chef Martinez seems to have scaled back his ambitious fusion plans, wrote one reviewer. The menu feels surprisingly conservative, lacking the innovation he's been promising. Then came the night of the TV show's airing. I hosted a private viewing party at the Golden Lotus, inviting select food critics and industry professionals. Martinez's show was known for its dramatic reveals and harsh critiques, but tonight, he would be the one exposed. The episode started typically enough. Martinez touring the food festival, offering his expert opinions on various dishes. Then came the blind tasting segment. This sauce, he declared on national television, tasting my original recipe, this is perfection. This is what happens when a true professional understands both traditional techniques and modern innovation. The cameras caught his enthusiastic praise in loving detail, including his elaborate explanation of why this was clearly the work of a master chef. Then came his dismissal of the modified version, the one his team had been trying to copy. Amateur hour, he scoffed. Someone clearly trying to imitate better chefs without understanding the fundamentals. The reveal of my identity as the winner was perfectly captured, including Martinez's frozen expression as he realized what he'd done. But the real bombshell came in the following segment, where he was supposed to demonstrate how he developed his own sauce recipes. He looked uncomfortable, stumbling through vague explanations about research and development. Viewers could clearly see the difference between his confident criticism of others and his inability to explain his own process. The reaction was immediate. Social media exploded with clips of Martinez praising my professional sauce while dismissing his own team's attempt to copy it. Food blogs began investigating the story behind the Golden Lotus and my family's culinary heritage. But I wasn't done yet. The next morning, as food websites were still dissecting Martinez's embarrassment, we released our trademark documentation, not just for the recipes, but for the entire cultural heritage story behind them. Celebrity chefs' revolutionary sauces exposed as copies of traditional family recipes read one headline. Small restaurant owner outsmarts culinary empire's attempt at recipe theft, said another. My favorite came from a food blog that had followed the story from the beginning. How 3 generations of Chinese-American culinary innovation humbled a celebrity chef. The impact on East meets West was devastating. Food critics who had received preview invitations suddenly published revised reviews, noting the suspicious absence of the innovative sauces Martinez had been promoting. It seems, wrote one prominent critic, that Chef Martinez's much-touted fusion revolution was built on borrowing others' innovations rather than creating his own. Martinez tried to fight back, first with legal threats, then with claims that all chefs borrow and adapt recipes. But our documentation was impeccable, showing not just the recipe's development but his team's systematic attempts to copy them. The story caught national attention, highlighted as an example of how traditional culinary knowledge needed to be both respected and protected. Cooking schools began including discussions of culinary heritage and attribution in their curricula. A month after the show aired, I received a visit from Mrs. Li, an elderly Chinese chef who had run a successful restaurant in Chinatown for 40 years. You did more than protect your recipes, she said, sipping tea in my office. You showed that our culinary heritage has value, that it deserves respect, not just appropriation. That's when the real impact of what we'd achieved became clear. This wasn't just about stopping a celebrity chef from stealing recipes. It was about preserving and protecting cultural culinary heritage while still allowing for genuine innovation. The Golden Lotus transformed from a successful local restaurant into a symbol of culinary authenticity and innovation. We began offering cooking classes, teaching not just recipes but the history and technique behind them. More importantly, we worked with other traditional restaurants to help them protect their own culinary heritage. Martinez's empire never fully recovered. East meets West remained open but was forced to completely revamp its concept. The celebrity chef himself stepped back from public appearances, though not before making one final visit to the Golden Lotus. I underestimated you, he admitted, sitting at a quiet corner table. I thought I could just take what generations of your family had created and claim it as my home. I served him our black cod with the original XO sauce. The difference between appropriation and inspiration. I told him it's respect for the heritage behind the recipe. A year later, I stood on stage at the National Culinary Institute, addressing a new generation of chefs. Our story had become a case study in both culinary innovation and cultural respect. Great cooking isn't just about technique, I told them. It's about understanding and respecting the heritage behind every recipe, while finding honest ways to innovate and grow. The culinary world had changed. Major food shows now included segments on recipe attribution and cultural heritage. Restaurant critics paid more attention to the authenticity and origin of fusion dishes. Last week, a young chef came to me for advice about opening her own fusion restaurant. As she nervously explained her concept, I found myself sharing my grandmother's favorite saying: "Innovation without respect is just imitation." The Golden Lotus continued to evolve, but always with respect for its roots. We developed new dishes that genuinely fuse cuisines, documenting and sharing our development process to show how true culinary innovation works. David helped me establish the Chen Culinary Heritage Foundation, dedicated to preserving and protecting traditional recipes while encouraging genuine innovation. Our first project involved working with immigrant families to document and protect their culinary heritage. You know, a food historian told me during a foundation event, you didn't just protect your family's recipes, you changed how the culinary world thinks about traditional cuisine and innovation. She was right. The ripple effects went far beyond one celebrity chef's embarrassment. Culinary schools now teach our case as an example of both what not to do and how to properly innovate while respecting traditional cuisine. Now, when I mentor young chefs, I tell them this story, not to criticize Martinez or celebrate my vindication, but to remind them that real culinary innovation comes from understanding and respecting the heritage behind every recipe. Because sometimes the most important culinary achievements don't come from celebrity chefs or fancy restaurants. Sometimes they come from family kitchens where recipes have been perfected over generations, passed down with love and respect from one cook to another. The trademark protections we developed became a model for other traditional restaurants. We helped create a framework that protected culinary heritage while still allowing for genuine innovation and fusion. Martinez, I heard, started a small consulting business helping restaurants develop their own original recipes. He even reached out once, asking if I would speak to his clients about the proper way to approach fusion cuisine. I learned an expensive lesson, he admitted. Sometimes the most valuable recipes aren't the ones you create, but the ones you respect enough to learn from properly. The foundation continues to grow, carrying forward my grandmother's legacy in ways that would have amazed her. We've helped preserve countless traditional recipes, protected culinary heritage across multiple cultures, and fostered genuine innovation in the food world. And every time we help another family protect their traditional recipes or guide a chef toward genuine innovation, I think about that small box of recipe cards my grandmother brought from China, and I smile, knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about preserving what truly matters for future generations to respect and enjoy.